In Catholic teaching, the election of a pope is not merely a human decision, it's a moment of divine intervention. The cardinals vote, yes, but it is the Holy Spirit who is believed to guide their hearts. And sometimes that guidance results in shock. There have been moments in church history when the conclave did not follow expectations, when frontrunners fell and outsiders rose, when the one chosen was not the one predicted, but the one needed. These moments shake the world, not with scandal, but with awe. In this video, we explore 5 times the Holy Spirit shocked the church during papal elections, instances that prove God's hand still stirs behind the locked doors of the Sistine Chapel. Number 5. The election of Pope John the 23rd, 1958. At 76 years old, Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli was seen as a transitional figure, someone elderly, kind, and unlikely to lead for long. He wasn't a theological firebrand. He wasn't a Vatican insider. He was expected to keep the boat steady after the long reign of Pius XII. But when the white smoke rose and John the 23rd was announced, the church smiled politely and then was stunned. Within months, the so-called caretaker pope did the unthinkable. He called for an ecumenical council, the Second Vatican Council. It was the first council since Vatican I nearly a century earlier. Under John the 23rd, the church opened its windows to the modern world, re-examined the liturgy, emphasized the role of the laity, and entered into dialogue with other religions in unprecedented ways. Few cardinals expected this gentle old man to spark such revolution, but in hindsight, his election is seen not as a safe bet, but a spirit-led gamble that changed Catholicism forever. His warmth, humility, and surprising boldness remain a testament to how the Holy Spirit can work through the underestimated. Even more remarkable was the cultural moment in which this happened. The late 1950s were a time of post-war rebuilding and global realignment. The church could have easily retreated into protectionism. Instead, through this surprising pope, it leaned forward. In doing so, it paved the way for liturgical reform, vernacular mass, and a new model of pastoral leadership that would echo for generations. Number 4. The rise of Pope John Paul II, 1978. In 1978, the world lost 2 popes in 1 year. Paul VI died in August. His successor, John Paul I, died just 33 days later. The conclave reconvened in a state of shock and grief. Many assumed the next pope would be Italian, as had been the norm for centuries. But when Cardinal Karol Wojtyła of Krakow, Poland, was announced, the world paused. A non-Italian pope? From behind the Iron Curtain? It was unthinkable. John Paul II's election was more than symbolic. It was seismic. He became the first Slavic pope in history, and his papacy would last over 26 years. He helped dismantle communism, traveled the globe as no pope before, and inspired a new generation of Catholics. His charisma, courage, and deeply philosophical mind re-energized the papacy, and none of it was expected. As one cardinal later said, "It was as if the Holy Spirit opened the windows and pointed us to the east." His election reminded the church and the world that God's geography is bigger than our traditions. His background as an actor, poet, and philosopher brought a deeply human and relatable dimension to the papacy. He spoke over 10 languages and could address crowds in their native tongue. He became a symbol of hope not only for Catholics, but for oppressed peoples everywhere. What began as a surprise turned into one of the most consequential pontificates in modern history. Number 3, the resignation of Benedict XVI in the election of Pope Francis, 2013. Sometimes the Holy Spirit shocks not in who is elected, but in what precedes it. In 2013, Pope Benedict XVI did the unthinkable. He resigned. No pope had voluntarily stepped down in nearly 600 years. His humility and honesty, citing declining strength and the needs of the church, set the stage for one of the most surprising elections in modern history. When the white smoke rose again, few expected the name Francis. Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio had been considered a runner-up in 2005, but at age 76, many thought his moment had passed. He had never worked in the Vatican. He was Jesuit. He chose the name Francis, never before used by a pope, and stepped onto the balcony without the red mozzetta, in silence and humility. His papacy would go on to challenge traditional expectations, emphasizing the poor, the periphery, the environment, and a church that goes forth. He rejected palace life, chose simple garments, and shook the image of the papacy itself. Francis's leadership has also been marked by pastoral sensitivity, global outreach, and reforms in Vatican administration. Whether viewed with admiration or concern, his election shocked the status quo and renewed a global conversation about what the Church can and should be in the 21st century. From Argentina to the world, his papacy began with a whisper, not a trumpet, and that whisper was spirit-born. Number 2, the longest conclave and the choice of Gregory X, 1271. Most modern conclaves last days. This one lasted over 2 years. After the death of Pope Clement IV in 1268, the 20 cardinals failed again and again to reach agreement. The conclave dragged on in Viterbo, Italy. Frustrated townspeople eventually locked the cardinals in, removed the roof, and limited their meals. Still, no white smoke. Then came a miracle. A group of cardinals proposed someone outside the conclave entirely. Teobaldo Visconti, a simple archdeacon, not even yet a bishop, who was on a diplomatic mission in the Holy Land. The cardinals unanimously agreed. He returned to Rome, was ordained bishop, and took the name Gregory X. He would go on to formalize the conclave process, ensuring future papal elections would have clear rules and structure. His selection was utterly shocking. No one in the room, not even a bishop. But he brought peace and reform. Sometimes the Spirit doesn't just choose unexpectedly, it chooses from outside the walls entirely. Gregory X's legacy lived beyond his pontificate. He codified procedures that shaped papal elections for centuries, placing spiritual focus above political pressure. His election reminds us that when human institutions break down, divine creativity steps in. It was not the fastest answer, but perhaps the most faithful one. Number 1, the election of Pope Celestine V, 1294. Few popes were more shocking and more tragic than Celestine V. After a 2-year conclave deadlock, the cardinals received a letter from a hermit monk named Pietro da Morone. He warned that God would judge them if they didn't choose a pope soon. In a stunning move, the cardinals turned around and elected him. He was not present. He had no political connections. He didn't want the role. But they saw in him a sign: purity, detachment, holiness. His papacy, however, was short and difficult. Unused to Vatican politics and overwhelmed by the burdens of office, he resigned just 5 months later. Yet his legacy is powerful. He remains one of the few popes to resign willingly and was later canonized a saint. His story reminds us that the Spirit sometimes chooses not for strength, but for witness. Even failure can be holy if it comes from obedience. Celestine's election also planted a seed that would grow over 700 years later in Benedict XVI. The notion that a pope could resign out of humility was once unthinkable. Now it's part of the Church's spiritual vocabulary, thanks in part to a hermit who never wanted the keys of Peter. The conclave is not a stage, it's a sanctuary, and the popes chosen across time often surprise not just the cardinals, but the world. In these 5 moments, we see how the Holy Spirit sometimes chooses the weak, the old, the distant, or the forgotten. Shock in the hands of God becomes transformation. Which of these moments surprised you most? And do you believe the next election might carry another surprise? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden hand of the Spirit in church history.